Calling to order the Planning Commission of Carson City meeting of April 27th, 2022. Can I get a roll call?
Chair Wiggins.
Present.
Vice Chair Preston. Present. Commissioner Borders. Here. Commissioner Eswine. Here. Commissioner Kilgore.
Here.
Commissioner Lloyd. Commissioner Perry.
Here.
A quorum's present.
Okay, please stand for the pledge. Commissioner Borders, please lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Members of the public are invited to address the commission at this time. Comment on any matter that is relevant to or within the authority of the Planning Commission, including any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. In order to participate, it's recommended, though, that if you have an item on the agenda, to go ahead and comment during that time period. But it's encouraged that you wait till that so it's more relevant during that item. Are there any public comment at this time? Just general planning commission type stuff. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to approval of the minutes of March 30th, 2022.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of March 30th, 2022.
Okay, can I get all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any nays? Motion passes. Okay, moving on to the meeting items. 6A, LU-2022-0061 for possible action. Discussion and possible action regarding a request for a special use permit for a fence located within the front setback area which exceeds the allowable fence height on property zoned single-family 1 acre and is located at 3809 Ponderosa Drive, APN 009-137-07. Heather?
Good evening, Chair Wiggins and Commissioners. Heather Manzo for the record. This request is on a property that is zoned single-family 1 acre. And the request is per Carson City Development Standards 1.13. The regulations state that a site obscuring fence may not exceed 3 feet in height when it's located in the front building setback. A fence has been constructed that is a combination of open view fencing on the top and solid fencing on the bottom, totaling 6 feet in height on the front property line. Per the development standards 1.13.7, fences within the setbacks may be permitted to exceed code height limitations with the approval of a special use permit. The Planning Commission is authorized to approve the special use permit. So the area for consideration this evening is highlighted on the slide, and it only pertains to the front yard setback. As noted on this slide, this includes both the picture of the existing fence as well as the plan that was provided by the applicant. The reason that we're before you today is because it exceeds the height limitation, and also walls are limited to 3 feet or less within the front setback. In this case, the wall portion is 3 feet or less. However, the vertical members are 6 feet tall. So, in terms of this request, staff has been able to make all the special use permit findings and is recommending approval. I did want to note that the applicant will be required to obtain a building permit. It's listed as a condition of approval, but also it's just a requirement per code. It's listed as a condition because we wanted to make it very clear that that would be the next step in this process. And I did want to note that the applicant has filed for a building permit as of, I believe, today for this. An additional condition is also recommended that provides the applicant with a couple different options in terms of the fence's location to existing water meter facilities. The fence is located a little bit too close to the water facility, and so the last condition of approval for this really does outline 3 different options that are available to the applicant in terms of how to remedy that situation. Some options are to relocate the wall, which, would pose its own challenges. And there's also another option to have that water meter relocated. If that's the option that the applicant would take, then that would require a separate permit for that would be reviewed by Public Works. So with the exception of the call in opposition to this request that was noted in the staff report, staff has not received any additional comments. The applicant is present to address you on this item, and I'm happy to answer any questions at the appropriate time. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Heather. The question I have, how did this come to staff's attention?
So it's kind of been a longstanding item. This came to our attention in 2016, I believe through a code enforcement action. So back in 2016, we had sent a notice to remedy the situation through the special use permit process. The reason it's been so many years is because that went through litigation and was finally settled. The city was found to be accurate and correct that a special use permit would be required for this. And so at this time, the applicant is in for that special use permit to legally establish the fence.
Are there any questions for staff?
Heather, I think we need to make sure that we state that the lawsuit was not by the current owner. Is that correct?
I would be happy to state that, yeah. The current owner is not the one that had constructed the fence, nor had been party to that lawsuit.
Any other questions for staff? Could the applicant come up, please? And there's a sign-in sheet too. You can sign when you get a chance. Would you like to make a statement? And please state your name for the record.
Thank you for seeing me. My name is Janet Thomas. I'm the new owner of this property, and I want to create good relationships with the planning department because I just recently moved to Carson. I love this town, and that's the reason for all this paperwork and so forth. So, and I appreciate Heather's work on this tremendously. I've looked at all of the conditions and feel confident to be able to bring them to fruition for the board at their proper time in reference to the recommended conditions of approval. We do not, the gate, by the way, is not automatic, so there's no knock switch necessary there. And as Heather said, the building permit is, we've already filed that. So on the way to meeting all of the conditions for the approval, and that's really about it.
Okay, perfect. That was going to be my next question, if you're okay with the conditions for approval. Does anyone have any questions for the applicant? So after the applicant speaks, we'll have a moment for public comment, so you can come up here, sign your name, and make public comment. Just for the benefit of folks that do make public comment, the commission generally just listens to public comment. It's not a dialogue back and forth, and you generally have about 3 minutes to make a statement. But I think we're at that point, so would anyone like to make public comment? Or you had a question? Yes. Okay. Commissioner Borders?
I understand what you said about the Knox box and condition number 6. Can we amend condition number 6 and say including the installation of a knock box in the event that the exterior gate becomes motorized?
It says that,
Is it in there?
yeah.
Yeah, so condition number 6 would not apply to the improvements as they're constructed now. It just really addresses
Okay, I got
if it does go
Well,
automatic.
I don't want to put another burden on it. It's fine the way it is, but if in the future, the third owner after may want to make an electric gate out of it, and I'd like to have something in there. So I'm sorry I misread it.
Any other questions for staff or the applicant?
I just wanted to offer up pictures in the community, which are like a couple of houses down, which have pretty much the same kind of thing.
You can hand those to staff, and then they can give it to us. Okay, any public comment on this item? Come on up. The,
So what do I do, sit next
so come on up and sign in
Okay.
and state your name and comment. And then you could have a seat if you'd like, applicant. Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks.
So my name is Jane Gangitano. And I'm not sure,
Is the microphone green?
I don't know.
Is it green? Oh, it did? Maybe a little closer to it. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Jane, oh, you can
Thank
hear
you.
that. Jane Gangitano. And I'm glad you have a photo up there because that's part of, I wrote it down so I don't get distracted. I think it's a beautiful fence. And so that's my comment. I'm not sure this actually applies today since it sounds like they've settled things pretty much. But I did want to say that I walked by the place, 3809 Ponderosa, and have always admired the beautiful fencing with its gorgeous stonework and complementary wrought iron that you can see right through. And I don't know if you've seen it, and I can see through the fence quite easily, and one can clearly see the beautiful garden that this nice lady, Jan, the new owner, has put in there. She and I have had plenty of neighborly conversations about her gorgeous garden, plants, and vegetables, which, again, can all be clearly seen from the street. So I don't know why a person or persons from the planning department would complain that the site is obstructed when it is not in any way obstructed. And when I walk by, and I'm not a tall person, I can see perfectly through to the property. And there are seven other properties with even taller fences in the neighborhood, and you cannot see through them. And one of them is a lot like a fortress. And I have these addresses here, but I hesitate to actually give them, but I will give them to you if you want to, because I don't want to, it seems like, from just what I've heard, that the planning department can really bully people. So I kind of hesitate to give out these addresses, but walking around the neighborhood, you can see them. Jan's fence adds beauty to the neighborhood, which would only increase property values. And I actually would love to have a fence just like that. My concern, of course, and other neighbors feel the same way, is that the planning department would jump all over someone who tried to beautify anything in the neighborhood. It is as if the planning department is intent on keeping the neighborhood as is with no improvement in the aesthetics of the place. It certainly is not a beautiful day in the neighborhood when the planning department comes around. There are other fences in the neighborhood that are as high or higher. How did they avoid the planning department harassment? What could possibly explain the burdensome harassment since apparently 2016 of the owners of this house, and especially of this very congenial, nice neighborly lady, seems to have endured from the planning department? Then one can't help but wonder, maybe the people with high fences are friends with someone in the planning department, or does someone in the planning department accept bribes? I hate to say that. Trust in the planning department is eroded when we see them use their power to bully someone. A truly cooperative, goodwill approach from the planning department would be appreciated by everyone in that neighborhood and in this city. I too am relatively new to Carson City, and I hated to see this happen. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Come on up.
My name's good. Name's good enough on there.
No, you stay for the record, please.
Oh, Peter Gibbons. I am the managing partner of the former owner. The property was in trust before, and we were the ones involved in the litigation. To be clear, we thought that the code section that the city was operating under was vague and kind of unfair. So that's how all that happened. But we've gone to court, it's all settled and so forth. And all I wanted to say is, when Ms. Thomas bought the property, we made clear to her that this could be an issue, and that we would make sure we took care of it. So that's why I'm here today, to let you know as Heather said, we did apply for the building permit. And with respect to the water meter, the plan is to move the meter, because that would be a lot easier than moving the wall. But engineering has informed me that a licensed plumber must make the application. So I reached out to our plumber to do that. I wanted to have this stuff in process so you'd see the good faith. But unfortunately, the guy's having some medical problems. And so I'm praying that he'll be okay. We'll have to find another plumber. But I just wanted to say that we're going to take care of all this, make sure everything's good to go and everybody's happy.
Thank you. Any other public comment? And if there's other public comment, to expedite it, you can come up here and sign in and then go next.
My name's Raman Dalrymple. I'm the guy that built the wall. And it seems to me that the issue that came up when I was building it like the owner wanted was that we could apply for a special use permit, but there was no guarantee that we would get approved, even though the wall was conforming with the regulations at the time. And so it was like we were going to pay $2,500, and then there was no guarantee that it was going to get approved. And there was other walls that were of similar type, so it seemed unfair. And I think that's how the whole ball got rolling in a weird way. And I think there was also a neighbor next door that was very upset that the wall was being built even between his property. And so I think that's what instigated some of the hubbub. So.
All right, thank you. Are there any discussion items from commissioners at this point? Seeing no more public comment. Yes.
I have a question more for our engineer. And the question is this house right, this fence right here, and this has nothing to do with this particular fence, or when I'm looking at this particular fence, I'm looking at the other pictures that have been brought up here. This is a stone fence. A lot of these other ones are concrete fences, and they appear to be over 72 inches high on the columns. And my question for that is that typically, wouldn't there have to be some kind of engineering and building permit for those fences?
Stephen Pote with Development Engineering. So a building permit is required for a 6-foot fence. And the building official is actually one that manages that review. There's a structural engineer that they have that reviews, foundations and that kind of thing. So.
Thank you for clarifying that, because I do know that in even things like putting in partitions in office buildings, if they're over 72 inches high, they have to be structural, so that way they don't fall on anybody or become a problem in the future. And I think that that's something to consider. And I realize that you built the fence, and I don't know if you had a permit, but at this point, what I'm looking at is as a former builder, I would have had to have a permit. And so that's what I'm saying, instead of being forgiven. So I think that I have a little problem with that. So I wanted to put that on the record.
I guess I'm still on.
Yeah, please
it's-
state your
it's
name.
not as-
Please state your name.
My
again
name is
for-
Raman Dalrymple.
Okay.
It's not a stone wall. It looks like a stone wall, but it's actually concrete. It was poured in 4 sections at a time, but it's the columns and the wall are all connected with rebar, and it's 4,000-pound concrete. It's not mortared stacked stones.
Are there any other commissioner comments, questions? Okay. The only comment I would make is I do empathize with having to pay $2,500 for a permit for a fence and often those things, but the reality is staff was there to check it, and now it's impacting a water meter, and we do have to pay for staff to be there. So and I do recall in the past there was something we approved and staff was able to actually reduce the fees because it was so little impact to staff. But in this case, it seems like they've done a lot of work on this, and I'm okay with moving this forward, putting it to motion. If anyone wants to put it to motion.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move to approve special use permit 2022-061 based on the ability to make all findings and subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report.
Second.
Commissioner Kilgore, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion passes. Next item on the agenda.
Thank you.
Sure. 6B, AB-2022-0086. For possible action, discussion and possible action regarding a request for the abandonment of a public right-of-way, Balsam Street, totaling approximately 60 feet, abutting the properties located at 5179 Silver Sage Drive, 5229 Silver Sage Drive, and 5290 Center Drive. Lena. Heather.
Actually, Heather.
I was expecting to see someone new.
No, I'm taking it for Lena today. The request before you this evening is for the abandonment of Balsam Street. Balsam Street is located in the southeastern area of the city between Center Drive and Silver Sage, just south of 580. A BLM patent originally included a right-of-way not to exceed 33 feet in width in this area. Subsequently, parcel map 1717, recorded in September of 1989, and dedicated a 60-foot right-of-way for Balsam Street. However, Balsam Street was never constructed, and therefore the right-of-way is proposed to be reverted in its entirety back to the 3 adjacent parcels. The Planning Commission reviews the abandonment and makes recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. The Board of Supervisors has the authority to approve the abandonment. There are 7 findings of fact that the Planning Commission must consider in making their recommendation to the board. Staff has made all 7 findings in the affirmative and is recommending approval, subject to 4 conditions of approval included in the staff report. We've not received any public comment regarding this project. Todd Enke with RCI is here representing the project, and I'm also available for questions.
Are there any questions for staff? I have one. How was this brought to you? I see the applicants are actually the 3 homeowners, but did you institute this or?
No, the applicants actually came forward requesting originally a half-street abandonment for the northern portion, and staff wasn't okay with that. We'd rather see the full street be abandoned because there's no anticipated construction of Balsam Street.
Okay, thanks. Could the applicant come up, please?
Good evening. Thank you for having us. Yeah. Good evening. Thank you for having me. Todd Enke, Resource Concepts. Pretty much Heather covered it all. My clients came to me initially, Gay Burns, who owned the northerly parcel and since has sold the property, to abandon the half street. We went with that process, and Stephen, Pate, you mentioned that we need to do all 3 parcels at the same time. We have gotten all neighbors on board. Currently, as you look at the overall picture, you can see that everybody is living up to that property line as it exists right now, so it makes sense that it was abandoned, with all 3 parcels, thinking about that. To me, from what we can tell, there's no further development, and we worked with Stephen and Heather and Lena to make sure that, there's nothing that appears that's going to happen on that area right now, and we believe it should be pushed forward.
Okay, thank you. And you are good with the 4 conditions of approval?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay. Are there any questions for the applicant?
I have a question. Were there ever any utility easements in the right of way?
We had to do an abandonment of an easement along the center line there.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner
Excuse me,
Borders.
you have done that?
Yes, that's being done concurrently.
Any other questions for the applicant or staff? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, is there any final discussion from the commission?
I'll just make a comment after looking at it. I mean, the homes face either Silver Sage or Center Drive, so I don't see a need for Balsam Street to exist. I mean, this looks like it dates back to a BLM patent when the land was put from federal government to private years ago. So just was never used, and it was built around it, and they face the other streets. So it makes sense to me.
I concur. You should probably do a motion.
Oh, okay. 2 in a row. I move to recommend that the Board of Supervisors approve the abandonment of Balsam Street based on the findings and subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion passes. Moving on to item 6C, LU-2022 0118 for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding a request for an amendment to a special use permit, SUP-17-085, to allow for the construction of a hoop house on property zoned public located at 208 Corbett Street. Before we get started, we have some disclosures from members of the commission. Commissioner Borders, you could start.
Mr. Chairman, NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. I'm a member of the Rotary Club of Carson City, and the Rotary Club donated the money to the Carson City School District for the construction of this hoop house that's a party to this item. Merely being a member of the Rotary Club does not give rise to the commitment in a private capacity to the Rotary Club or to the school district. While I make this disclosure, NRS 281A.420 requires abstention only in clear cases. I do not believe that the independence of my judgment is materially affected by this matter. Therefore, I do not have a disqualifying conflict and will be voting on this matter.
Okay, how about Commissioner Eswine? Do you want to put your microphone on?
NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. I am a member of the Rotary Club of Carson City. The Rotary Club donated money to the Carson City School District for construction of the hoop house that is at issue in this item. Merely being a member of the Rotary Club does not give rise to a commitment in a private capacity to the Rotary Club or the school district. While I make the disclosure, NRS 281A.420 requires abstention only in clear cases. I do not believe that the independence of my judgment is materially affected in this matter. Therefore, I do not have a disqualifying conflict and will be voting on this matter.
Okay, Commissioner Perry.
Okay, thank you. So, seems like a lot of Rotarians here. I'm the president of the of the Carson City Rotary Club. I'm in a different city here today. And I actually wrote the grant with the school district for this to obtain the funds to do it. So I'm going to abstain from this because I think that's too close to it, so.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Heather, and Heather, you have to explain what a hoop house is. I had to look it up.
All right.
We have a picture.
Yeah.
I know.
Heather Ferris for the record. The subject parcel is just under 2 acres in size, zoned public, and is the site of the Pioneer High School. The applicant is proposing to add a small 200 square foot hoop house or greenhouse to the eastern portion of the campus. Students will participate in everything from the design of the project to growing and harvesting the fresh produce and flowers produced on site. The public zoning district only allows a use to be established or amended subject to a special use permit. The previous special use permit for the expansion and remodel of the school did not anticipate this use. Therefore, they're before you for a special use permit tonight. The Planning Commission is authorized to approve a special use permit upon making all 7 findings of fact in the affirmative. Staff has made all 7 findings and is recommending approval, subject to 5 conditions of approval included in your staff report. I will note there is an incorrect reference in the staff report to an outdoor classroom and office. To be clear, the request before you tonight is just for the 200 square foot hoop house or greenhouse. We've not received any public comments regarding this project. Mark Kornick with the school district is here, and I'm available for questions.
Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, could the applicant please come up?
Mark Cornick, Director of Operations, for the record.
Okay, are you okay with all the conditions of approval?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Are there any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you. Is there any public comment at this time? Seeing none, any discussion from the commissioners? Looks like it's time for a motion. The non-Rotarian.
I know you do. Okay. I'd like to, I move to approve LU 2022-0118 based on the ability to make the required findings and subject to the conditions of approval included in the staff report.
Second.
Commissioner Kilgore, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion passes.
One abstention.
Oh, plus an abstention. Yeah. Commissioner Perry. Okay, moving on to item 6D, LU-2022-0116 for possible action. Discussion and possible action regarding a request for a special use permit to allow for the construction of a 682 square foot guest building on property zone single family 6,000 located at 1802 Rand Avenue. Heather.
Heather Ferris again for the record. The project is located at the northwest corner of Rand Avenue and Rand Court, approximately a quarter mile north of East William Street and west of 580. The subject parcel is approximately 1/3 acre in size and zoned single-family 6,000. A guest building is a conditional use in the SF6 zoning district. Therefore, the applicant is requesting a special use permit to construct a 682 square foot guest building. A guest building is also subject to the requirements outlined in Division 1.4 of the development standards. As proposed, the guest building will meet the requirements of Division 1.4. The guest building will be, as I said, 682 square feet in size and therefore no larger than 50% of the assessed floor area of the main residence. The setbacks and height limitations are consistent with the SF6 zoning district, and adequate parking is being provided for the guest building. A full analysis of how the guest building meets Division 1.4 is included in the staff report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about that. I will point out for the benefit of the record that Division 1.4 allows guest buildings to be occupied only by family members of the primary residence or other non-paying guests, and it does prohibit renting the facility. The Planning Commission is authorized to approve a special use permit upon making all 7 findings in the affirmative. Staff has made all 7 findings and is recommending approval, subject to 8 conditions of approval included in your staff report. We have not received any public comment on this special use permit. The applicant, Riley Waterhouse, is in attendance, and I'm available for questions.
Okay, thank you, Heather. I have one question. Were there any street improvements? I saw a driveway or some in one of the design pictures, I believe. Is that part of this?
So it's not particularly clear from the picture, but if they have a garage, they'll have to have a driveway. If they choose to have a driveway without a garage, they would have to meet city standard, well, they'd have to meet city standards either way.
Okay, so that modified curb to driveway, I think it's just a curb currently.
The applicant is proposing to modify that curb to access the guest house via that. There's an existing, I believe it's concrete pad there.
Okay. Could the applicant come up, please? Are there any questions for staff, by the way, before we get there?
Yeah, I've got one.
Okay, Commissioner Borders?
The diagram shows a lift station. Is that something that we have to certify? Or is it just a recognition that there's not enough fall from the house to the sewer?
Yes.
And is that our requirement or is their requirement, or how does that get adjudicated?
So a sewer lateral has a minimum slope of 2%.
Yeah,
If they can't make that fall, then they would have to install a sewer lift station. So that's probably what's going on there. And there's minimum standards that they have to meet for that.
okay, so the standards are in the building permit, okay.
Correct, yeah.
And this is a kid house, right?
Excuse
You
me?
don't know, is this a kid house?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, I'm done.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, we'll move on to the applicant.
Hi, my name is Riley Waterhouse, and I live in the house there. Our plans are to actually, my wife and I move into the guest house and have her son move, and his family move into the house. So we're trying to help them out.
Oh, okay, good. Are you okay with the conditions for approval?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, thanks. Are there any questions for the applicant?
He answered mine.
Okay, thank you. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, is there any discussion from the commission? Comments? No?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to approve LU 2022-0116 based on the findings and subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report.
Commissioner Eswine, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 6E. LU-2022-0117 for possible action. Discussion and possible action regarding a request for special use permit to allow for the establishment of a child care facility on property zoned single-family 6,000 located at 2894 Pine Brook Drive. Heather.
Good evening, Heather Manzo for the record. So this property is located within a single-family neighborhood and backs to Solomon Road with an elementary school across Solomon from the project site. A special use permit is required for an in-home childcare facility and may have up to 12 children with the approval of a special use permit, and as long as the use would comply with state regulations for childcare facilities. The proposed use will retain a single-family appearance from the public spaces. There is parking available either from the driveway and there's also on-street parking available on both sides of the street. The interior and exterior square footage of space is regulated by the state, and so the applicant would need to comply with those standards to meet the state requirements for a child care facility. I should note that late material was circulated yesterday, I believe, noting opposition, stating concerns with potential noise of children playing outside, and also concerns related to traffic. I did want to note that this type of use would not trigger a traffic study of any sort. And so the applicant is here to speak to kind of lay out their proposed operations and to answer any questions you may have. Staff is able to make all their findings and with the recommended conditions, recommends approval of this request. Thank you.
Heather, I have a question. How many other, and maybe it's just a guess, how many other types of places are like this kind of in a residential neighborhood?
So I did do a business license search for this when I was doing research, and there are 5 existing home-based businesses within Carson City for childcare facilities.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff?
Yes.
Commissioner Perry?
I do. Noted that the applicant is required to get a state permit for childcare facilities. So is that actually where the permit comes from? There's not a separate permit required by Carson City, it's just a state permit?
Yeah, so the applicant will be required to obtain a Carson City business license, but the primary approval comes from the state. The regulation is by the state.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, could the applicant come up, please? Try again.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Howdy. I have been a childcare provider for over 7 years. This is something that I love to do. Pretty much my goal is to help the childcare need in the Carson City area and pretty much help parents in need. And yeah.
Thank you. Have you seen the conditions of approval, and are you okay with those?
Yes, I have.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant?
Chairman,
Yes.
recommended, condition number 7 states you shall get your state and local licensing.
Yes.
You've done pretty much most of that already, haven't you?
Yes, I have a state surveyor, and I'm in full contact with her, and she's fully aware of what we're going to be doing for the next few months, pretty much.
Okay. And your application was well written.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
That's all I had.
Okay.
So if I could just, so you have your state permit to do this already?
Yes.
So the last remaining part of this is to get this
Yes.
special use permit?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments for the applicant or staff? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Is there any public comment on this item? There you go.
Hello, my name is Robert Hernandez. I live in the house right next door. When she first moved in and started that, I was worried. But since then, I've had no issues, no noise issues, no traffic issues. They've been great neighbors. Kids have been really, really well respected. They say hi, they wave, so we haven't had any issues.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Any discussion from the commissioners? I agree with Commissioner Borders. This was a really good application. I like the fact that they did staggered drop off, and that would be my biggest concern if I was to see this. So I appreciate that. That addressed my concern with having this. But is there any other commissioner discussion or a motion? Commissioner Preston?
I move to approve the special use permit in case number LU 2022-0117 based on the ability to make the required findings and subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion passes. Yeah. Okay, moving on to item 6F. LU-2022-0119 for possible action. Discussion and possible action regarding a request for a special use permit to allow for the construction of a 126-unit multifamily residential development, including the construction of retaining walls within the required setback on property zoned retail commercial located at the intersection of Roop and North Ridge Drive. Heather.
Thank you. Good evening again. For the record, Heather Manzo. So the subject site is located on the east side of Roop and on the north and south sides of Northridge. The two parcels total approximately 4.73 acres in size. The general area consists of single-family residential homes to the east and a mixture of multifamily and commercial uses to the north and to the west. The parcel to the south of the project is a vacant Carson City property, which is not formally developed but is utilized for social trails. Multifamily sites that are located nearby are located off of Hot Springs Road, about a quarter-mile away from the project. Among those multifamily projects includes another applicant-operated project called Valley Springs, which opened in 2019. In terms of this request, the site is located in an area that is, for the most part, built out. Aside from these two vacant parcels associated with the project, there is another vacant site located directly to the west across Roop Street from the property. The north property is considered to be phases 1 and 2, and the south property are phases 3 and 4. Each property will have 63 units if approved. In terms of special use permit requests, the north parcels, so phases 1 and 2, really have 2 special use permit requests. The first is for a residential project within a non-residential zone. That would be the same also for phases 3 and 4. A second special use permit request only applies to the northern parcel, and that's because that northern parcel is directly abutting single-family zoning to the east. And so along with their request for the multifamily use is a request for the construction of fences or walls within the 30-foot required setback to that east. As you can see on the site plan, and also in having probably visited the site, there are some existing rockery walls that are located within that 30-foot setback today. The applicant is proposing to kind of build upon those existing walls and expand them to accommodate this project. And because those are within that 30-foot setback, there is a special use permit trigger. I would say, though, in terms of the walls themselves, because this site is about 20 feet lower than the residences above them, there should be no impact to the residents in terms of those walls. So I did want to provide a slide that shows from the Roop Street sidewalk looking up toward the single-family residences. That is about 20-plus feet from the edge of sidewalk to the finished grade of the residences to the east. And then since phases 3 and 4, which is on the south side of the site, are not located adjacent to residential properties, and they are separated by a pretty decent distance from those single-family residences, it's not anticipated that the development of this parcel would have an adverse effect on the properties to the east. So in terms of architecture, I'm going to focus mainly on the north parcel elevations because these are the ones that are directly adjacent to those residences. So the third elevation down, which lists the east elevation, this is what would be viewed from the backyards of those single-family properties. The application materials note that the building height based on our code definition is proposed to be 36 feet tall. However, the applicant did note that at the peak of the highest point of the roof, that would be 40 feet in some of the taller portions of the building. The roof pitches and angles have all been designed to minimize the impacts from the mass and scale of the project on the nearby residents. And then in addition to that, the elevations do adhere to the Carson City design standards in terms of articulation. I did want to note that the applicant has included in their proposal carports that do meet that 30-foot setback from the east property line. Those carports may or may not include solar array, so they just wanted to make sure that they include that in this request, so that it's covered if the request is approved. So in terms of public comment, I have received quite a few probably 7 either folks stopping by the office to talk about the project or phone calls. You also did receive, I think, 2 late materials, one yesterday in expressing some concerns, and then another was distributed today noting 5 letters of support for the project because it is really geared toward veterans' preference, and those letters of support did kind of note that need within the community. So to summarize kind of the public comments that I received, they really were focused on traffic, potential crime, building height and that impact to the single-family residences, and parking. In terms of crime, I did reach out to the sheriff's department to just kind of have a conversation about calls for service on the kind of partner project located on Hot Springs Road. In their opinion, the calls for service are not extreme or high. They're actually relatively low, and there is an adequate ability for the sheriff's office to serve this project. And then in terms of height, the rooftops are oriented to take into consideration the adjacent residences and to maximize the articulation and architectural changes when viewed from the single-family residences. I would also like to note that the retail commercial zone, if the project were a commercial project and were to be submitted today, they could have up to 45 feet and go straight to building permit. The reason that this is before you is because of the multifamily project. And then in terms of parking, the applicant included a justification letter using nationally recognized standards, including the ITE manual, outlining both affordable housing parking, which is less than 1 space per unit, and also for multifamily, which is about 1.3 spaces per unit. The applicant had made a request to staff for a parking ratio of 1.4 spaces per unit, although their site plan shows 1.5, so they're a little bit over what their request may be, just in case there might be some modifications to the site plan during the development process. So in terms of parking reductions, that's something that is left to the Community Development Director for possible approval, and should the special use permit move forward, staff would be supportive of that request. The reason being is, one, the ITE manual supports it, and then more particularly when we're talking about boots on the ground in Carson City, the partner project on Hot Springs Road just down the street, the applicant did an independent site analysis, kind of reviewing parking availability through 3 different visits to the site at various days and times. And staff followed up with several site visits as well, both during the day and in the evenings, to confirm up their claim that there's more than sufficient parking at that site. So based on those facts, staff did support the 1.4 parking spaces per unit. And then in terms of traffic, I would like to turn it over to Stephen to kind of follow up with that, and then also the applicant is here with their subject matter staff available to answer questions at the appropriate time. So with that, I just wanted to note staff was able to make all the findings with the recommended conditions of approval and recommends approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Heather. So yeah, there may be other items of concern with respect to traffic that come up with public comment, but one in particular I wanted to address ahead of time, which was that the packet actually has 2 traffic impact studies in it. That's not typical. It is typical for us to work with applicants if there's an issue with their studies, whether it's traffic, water, sewer, and get those fixed ahead of time and updated. And typically you'll just have the updated study, so I apologize for any confusion that that's caused. But one of those is the old study, and then there's one that was revised. The reason for that revision is that the first study was using a level of service criteria for roadway segments, which was inconsistent with the actual site conditions and roadway types. So this commission is used to hearing about level of service for intersections. This isn't intersections, which is pretty cut and dry for us, but actual roadway segments, so the piece of road in between intersections. And then also the criteria that they used resulted in failing level of service on 2 roadway segments. Carson City and the state of Nevada neither have standards for determining roadway segment level of service. So traditionally, with the city, our traffic impact studies are limited to looking at driveway placement, pedestrian crossings, maximum allowable speed, roadway geometry, and that type of thing for the actual segments rather than level of service. And all of those factors, none of them posed a concern for this project.
Sir, please be respectful.
Even though our TISs don't typically analyze roadway segment level of service, due to what was shown, the failing level of service, we did find it prudent to have the applicant provide criteria that was consistent with the actual site conditions and roadway types, which they did, and that did result in passing level of service for those roadway segments. And that's also consistent with the traffic model and the level of services that we're seeing at those intersections. Typically, those tend to correlate, especially if you have very few driveways, which is true on these two roadway segments, is that there's only, I think, 3 driveways on 1, 3, or 4, and then just the proposed driveway on the other roadway segment. So for the segment to be failing and the level of service for the intersections to be passing doesn't seem to add up when there's not really anything happening in between. So with that, I'm open for questions if you have for engineering.
Okay, on this picture in the far south, there's a entry and exit, and limited sight distance was the first thing I saw. The north property has a center turn lane, but what is the remedy for that, or is the city looking at that? Route is heavily traveled, and most people drive at least the speed limit.
Bear with me, I'm looking at the street view just so I'm not speaking out of turn here.
Or is there enough right of way to put a center turn lane there for entry and exit?
I don't know that there's sufficient right-of-way for a center turn lane there. What we could do is do additional analysis on the site distance to determine if that's an issue, in which case the applicant would have to propose a remedy if it is an issue. Probably it would be a right-in, right-out condition at that driveway. And that analysis could be done with the site improvement permit.
Okay. Are there any questions for staff? Commissioner Borders?
Stephen, along that same line, on that section 3 and 4, if I was coming down, if I was headed north on route, coming over that hill, and there's somebody trying to turn right into there, there's a good chance I might smack him if I wasn't paying attention. It just seems like that needs some sort of a little pullout, or at least some relief because of the obstructed view that you may or may not have coming over that hill and coming down into that property. I know it's not proposed here, but I think it's worth at least looking at. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm tracking. So it sounds like, again, site distance is the concern
Yep.
there.
Any other questions for staff?
I have a question. Now, are these 1-bedroom units, 2-bedroom units?
We can have the applicant come up to answer that question if you would like.
Yes, please.
Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Eswine?
On the site plan included with the application, it shows the median on Northridge being extended beyond the driveways, but on this illustration, up here. It doesn't show. So I'm wondering what, the median here is, which is it going to be?
Thank you for the question. We did have a bit of inconsistency between the traffic report, which is where that diagram had come from in the application materials. So yes, there's a median there today, but it doesn't extend past the driveways on Northridge. It will be as a part of this project.
Any other questions for staff?
I have one more question. Is that typically when we see a multifamily project, it's usually on one APN, and that this is two APNs, they're not going to be built concurrently, so it's going to be a phased situation? It just seemed unusual.
Thank you. I had that same thought until I started thinking about it. So yes, in terms of the phasing plan, they did break it down into 4 phases for just kind of ease of discussion. However, they may construct out of order, which would be totally okay as long as each phase is a standalone project, which means that it wouldn't be reliant on future development in order to function. So the applicant does have some options. They can launch all of the construction on either the north or south site all at once, or they may construct one phase on each site at a time. It really just depends on the market.
But we're being asked to consider both sites.
You are. And as noted in the staff report, the order of how it's constructed is not really most important. It really just matters in terms of whether or not the phase that is brought in for construction can stand alone without reliance on a future phase. So some of the improvements that are associated with the roadway, like the median extension and the driveway locations and things like that, those will all come in with the appropriate phase, like the Northridge Drive, because it doesn't really matter if it's the north or south side that's being constructed. That'll come in with the first phase of development that's constructed.
Commissioner Borders?
Heather had taken that for my simple mind. If I'm looking at phases 1 and 2, that means that in the construction of phase 1, that entire parking lot will be completed. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Oops. Yes, that's correct. For both phases, they identified all of the site improvements, the parking, the landscaping, and everything of that nature with the first phase. The remainder phase would basically be the building and the immediate area around the building.
So another way to do it would be phase 1 and phase 3.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
Yes, I do.
Commissioner Perry?
So I'm looking at the drawings here, and having walked out there, on the north side, there's existing sidewalk, right? The south side does not have sidewalk, correct? But that would be done as part of this project.
That's correct.
So can you, I'm looking at kind of a detailed map here, and I wasn't quite sure how to walk this out, but can you just, in layman's terms, describe how Northridge is going to change as you're coming down past the apartments going towards Roop Street? Is there a median? Is there an additional turn lane? There's not a as is now and this is the future comparison here that I can really understand.
Okay, and we might turn it over to Stephen if I don't answer your question appropriately. So you're talking about westbound on Northridge toward Roop?
Yes.
Okay, so on the north side of Roop, north side of Northridge, there's the pedestrian sidewalk and landscape area. On the south side, we've actually recommended a condition that would not only incorporate sidewalk along the project frontage, but also would extend it to where the sidewalk ends to the east. So for Northridge, there will be sidewalks on both sides of the street, associated landscaping along the frontage, and then the extension of the median on Northridge to go to the east of the driveways for both of the access points on Northridge.
So it would connect the sidewalk on the south end to that city parking lot that people use to stop and park and go hiking.
Yes,
right?
That's correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions for staff? Could the applicant come up, please?
Good evening. Oh.
Green.
Good evening, Stacy Huggins with Wood Rogers for the record, representing the applicant, Northern Nevada Community Housing.
Hello. Hello. My name is Matthew Fleming. I'm the Executive Director of Northern Nevada Community Housing. Thank you so very much for having us here.
If it pleases the commission, I have a quick presentation. Heather did a fantastic job summarizing the project, but there are a couple things I'd like to touch on if that is something that's amenable to you all.
Yes,
Okay,
please.
perfect. I'm going to turn it over to Matt to start.
Again, Matthew Fleming, Executive Director, Northern Nevada Community Housing. Our organization develops, owns, and manages high-quality, affordable housing coupled with supportive services for those most in need in the communities we build in. Our organization is a 501c3 nonprofit community housing development organization. That is a CHOTO designation that is given to special class of developers in the state of Nevada that are nonprofits that specifically focus their efforts on the development of affordable housing for those most in need. It also means that we're good stewards of taxpayer dollars. We pay them back. We don't take from taxpayers, we give back. Any money that we receive in funding is structured as a loan that we pay back. And we have currently 17 properties in the Northern Nevada area, one of which is literally a stone's throw from this site called Valley Springs Apartments. It opened in 2019. It is 62 units. It'll be a very similar project to what we're proposing. And the project we're proposing, although it's on Roop Street, the name of that project will be Eagles Landing. It will also be serving veterans in a partnership with the VA and other local veteran service providers. You can see from our product, we do not produce an eyesore for the community. We increase property values, we increase safety through our partnership with local law enforcement, and as well as the way that we design our buildings with internal security apparatuses with the highest technology. You couple that with basically our veteran resident makeup. These folks fought for our freedom, and they love where they live. They take pride that a developer built something specially designed for them that would allow them easier access to services so they don't have to have a vehicle. They appreciate that we connect with as many local providers in the area to maximize their ability to retain their occupancy, to overcome any disabilities, and to work through any crisis management situation that may arise. We are the best neighbors you would possibly want because we live here. I was born and raised here. I love Nevada. I love Carson City. We are committed to our projects for 50 years and more, and we're wanting to make our community better and work with each and every single one of you in your Rotaries and others that care about veterans and believe that they deserve somewhere quality to live. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. I'm going to talk just a little bit about some of the project details and
Could you
Heather,
get closer to the microphone,
Oh,
please?
sorry. I forgot. So let's get it closer to me. Heather, if you could go to, you've already touched where the project is and how big it is. Just a little bit of recap. I'll talk about the north first and the south after as I go through this. But combined, again, north and south, this project is 126 units of workforce housing with a veteran preference. Heather mentioned the reason for the special use permits, but again, it's the residential use in a non-residential district and the walls over 6 feet in height. On that north side, there are 63 units. The buildings are 3-story with a 40-foot max, as you can see on that bottom picture there. The 40 feet hits the rooftop angles. So you can see that's below the allowed 45 feet. On the north side, the parking as proposed is 96 parking spaces, and that's based on that alternative parking rate we're seeking. On the north side, there are kind of its own standalone community amenities. So that north project will include a community center building, an open courtyard, barbecue areas, play structures, a path system and garden areas, and just general areas where the folks that live in these projects have, or developments have a place to commingle. Okay, next slide, please, Heather. So we heard and understood that there were some concerns about these proposed buildings impacting the adjacent homes' views to the west. And so what you can see there on the bottom is an image showing how the three-story buildings relate to the existing homes to the east. Those homes to the east are significantly higher than the pad now. So you can see while there is a very small area right at the sight line, maybe right at the top of a fence for those adjacent properties. Generally speaking, the three-story building will not impede their views to the west of the mountains. Next slide, Heather. So this is just looking at the south side, just touch on really the biggest difference on the south side is a parking space calculation. On this side, we have 100 parking spaces. And I will note that while we only show designated a total of 6 accessible spaces in these two projects, we can have any number of accessible spaces. 6 was the minimum required. If we need more, we can certainly provide them. I know that when these projects come through, if someone needs a specific one near their site, the development team has more than once gone out and done a van accessible space to accommodate that user. Next slide. And so again, looking at that cross-section and being sensitive to those existing homes to the east, this is a cross-section through the south site. The yellow line through the top of that depicts where that cross-section is taken. And again, you can see how those residents to the east on the north side of Northridge, their views are not impeded looking to the west or the south. Next slide. Just really quick, I know that staff touched on the traffic study, and I appreciate the clarification between the two studies. And we do have, our traffic engineer is here for additional questions if we need it. We did look at 2 driveways on North Roop and 2 driveways on Northridge. The study was written assuming a multifamily project. And I mention that because really that means that the numbers are conservative in comparison to an affordable workforce housing project. So based on a multifamily development, the project is anticipated to generate 883 average daily trips with 62 AM peak hour trips and 75 PM peak hour trips. The study did not suggest or find that the roads could not accommodate that. As was discussed earlier. The traffic study did identify some recommendations associated with this project, a flashing yellow arrow at the approaches at Roop and Northridge, an installation of ADA pedestrian curb ramps at the driveways, and then limit turning movements on Northridge to the right and right out, which staff earlier discussed about the median being extended. Sorry, Heather, I was kind of going fast. That summarizes my presentation. We've reviewed the staff report. Staff was able to make all those findings. We've reviewed the conditions. We agree with all of them. As I mentioned previously, we have several members from our team here. Our project engineer is here, our architect is here, and also our traffic engineer is here. So we're all available to answer questions if you have them. Thank you.
Okay, first off, are you okay with all the conditions of approval?
Yes, we are.
Maybe your traffic engineer could address this, because I'm not sure if Stephen completely answered my question on what we could do about that limited sight distance on Roop, or what could potentially be solved with that, turning in, turning out.
Brian Gant with Wood Rogers for the record. We've taken a look at that, both desktop audit and going out in the field and taking a look at what that would be like to take a left turn out of that south driveway. One of the, because there, as it was mentioned, the topography there does rise and along a horizontal curve. One of the things that does come into play there is as you're driving north along Roop Street, there's actually a downgrade as you're approaching the project site. That actually helps the site visibility because as you turn to the side, it's easier to spot vehicles as they're coming over that crest. Qualitatively, it looked like it would meet most engineering criteria. That could be analyzed further with surveyed site triangles to determine that's the case. If there were an issue that it didn't meet site distance requirement for a left turn out of there, that driveway could be considered for a right in, right out only.
Okay. Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner S1.
Yeah, concerning if you go to the right in, right out only on that south entrance, how do you go north on, I just answered my own question, never mind.
Let's see. Is that you, Chuck?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Commissioner S1.
Couple of
Border, sorry.
Chuck Borders for the record. On the third floor, is there an elevator in this building?
Just wanted to make sure. Stacy Huggins for the record, yes, there is an elevator.
Okay. And I would like to say that I watched the Valley Springs being built because I go up and down that road a lot. One of the things that struck me as being really beneficial was the fact that you all built a bus stop with a pullout there. Is there a bus stop pullout or where this project needs a bus stop, I think, personally, somewhere. And I don't know where it would go or how you all have thought about it or not, but I think it's certainly worth a consideration, and I'm not going to try and engineer it for you. I just think that there ought to be some sort of a place where we could have the bus be able to safely stop and move people in and out.
If I may, Matthew Fleming, I 100% agree, and we would love to do that. And I've even seen one of the public comments request a potential flashing light when someone's trying to cross the crosswalk. I'd be more than happy to install that too. We, again, want to make not only the area we build safe for our veterans, we want it to be safe for the community that surrounds us. So we're 100% behind that.
Commissioner Perry?
Yes. And this is just, I think I'm reading this right. So the clubhouse is in the north parcel up there, and there's not one in the south. So if I'm living in the south in one of those apartments, how am I going to cross the road to go to the clubhouse?
Thank you. This is Matthew Fleming again. Well, we would encourage them to utilize the crosswalks and any safe pedestrian access point, obviously. But if what your concern is that we're going to have a lot of foot traffic going across, we do not anticipate that with the client base that we have. We structure our offices where most of the work that's needed for our clients can be done through a cell phone. Their rent, their work orders, communication with management. We just don't anticipate that. And each site has its own additional amenities, their own park, their own gardens, their own barbecues. So the only reason would be to go to the office to talk to management, which 95% of the reasons they would go are not there anymore because we have such an amazing property management program that is perfectly suited to serve this population, and we use it through several federal programs, including the Rural Housing Authority at Richards Crossing, another project that is here that our organization manages for the housing authority.
So I guess basically the answer is they're going to have to use the crosswalk from the south to the north on Roop Street and Northridge, that crosswalk.
I don't see under any, I mean, unless they,
Is that the one you were
Drive.
talking about putting a flashing yellow light on?
it's, what I said was I had read a comment, a suggestion from someone in the agenda. And what I was commenting is that our organization is more than happy to consider any and all of those types of improvements that would encourage safety for the community at large.
Is there a crosswalk there now?
Yes.
Right, there is, okay, yeah. It's marked. Can you comment on what the actual rents will be for these apartments?
I may have to refer to some of my staff here. Jocelyn? The one bedrooms, which, by the way, all utilities are included, power, gas, water, phone, internet, and for a one bedroom, $735, and a two bedroom, $866.
Okay, thanks. Most developers can't come up with those numbers, so I'm kind of impressed that you did.
I'm just glad I have my people here.
I have another question, but it's for your traffic design guy here, if he could come back. In your traffic modeling that you did here, was it to the detail enough to determine what percentage of the actual traffic flow would go onto Northridge and what percentage would go onto Roop?
Brian Gant for the record. That is included in the calculations. It is not, as I recall, overtly stated in the report itself. So I'd have to go back and look at our supporting calculations. It's not part of the document itself, but the results of that analysis is in there.
Okay. I mean, that would be an interesting number, I think, to a lot of folks, because I'm looking at it, trying to visualize in and out here, and I'm guessing most of that it's going to access ingress and egress off of Roop, because you can only turn right off of Northridge, or, yeah, right? You can only turn right because of the divider there. It would be an interesting number to know, I guess. I think people would be interested in that.
Yeah, and a lot of that depends on the destination and of where people are going. In general, the trip distribution has, if I remember correctly off the top of my head, it's about 40% heading to the north, about 40% heading to the south, 40% heading south, and the rest kind of heading east-west.
And I wouldn't expect that a lot of it would be heading into Northridge on a percentage basis, right? Because that's a residential neighborhood.
Right. Oh, for sure. When I say points east-west, that's more College Parkway or Hot Springs or something like that.
Okay. I think you pretty much answered my question. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman?
Sir, we can't have those comments in here. You're welcome to leave and watch this on TV. You're welcome to leave and watch this on TV, but you're distracting the process. Yeah, there'll be time for public comment. Thank you. Oh, he had his hand up. Commissioner Eswine?
My question from earlier, if you're going to have right in and right out only on that south driveway, how do people get to go south on Roop Street? Since you've got the median at the other entrance.
Yeah, that would be a complication with the right in, right out at that southern entrance. So it would require someone that wanted to go south out of that southern phase to work their way around through the network, depending on their destination.
If I could, just to clarify, that southern driveway is not currently limited as designed to right in, right out. Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Commissioner Preston?
I'm just asking for the clarification of how many one bedrooms and how many two bedrooms? is one of the things I'd like to know. The other thing is that I realize we have several veterans projects in Carson City. Richards Landing is one. Then we also have this one on Hot Springs Road. I know there's a lot of veterans, but I didn't know that there was this many. So my question is this going to be subsidized housing for workforce? If it is going to be subsidized housing for workforce, although the rents are very, very reasonable, I've had quite a bit of experience with workforce housing in Reno in some of the other complexes that they didn't fill them up right away. The casinos actually came in and bought properties to be rented at half price and so forth. And what has happened with those is that if you have 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, with a 1 bedroom, you can have 2.5 people, and with a 2 bedroom, you can have, 4 people plus. And right now, there are properties that are in Reno that had garages, that the garages are full. The parking is so taken over that they're parking in parking rides and into shopping centers and so forth. So when I look at if this is workforce housing, veterans housing, these are people that are working. I mean, if we're using workforce housing, veterans housing, they're doing things. The VA is still in Reno. So my question for this is, I'm concerned about reducing the parking. I'm concerned that the parking is so close to these entrances. And although it shows that we're not a commercial arterial there, we have certain arterials that people in Carson have used forever. You have Division Street, you have Curry Street, you have Carson Street, and now that's been limited. Now you have Stewart Street that pulls into Roop Street, and Roop Street pulls into College Parkway. And out at College Parkway is with our manufacturing that we have out there, a lot of the people are coming down Roop Street, and they're going into the state offices at Technology Way, the manufacturing, the welfare offices, the taxation offices, rural clinics. I mean, that whole GONI thing. And so when I'm looking at this, and I am concerned about the traffic study, because this is basically a 2-lane road with a single turn. And I know that a couple of times when everybody's back in the workforce and they're really working, which right now not everybody's returned to the workforce, it's kind of difficult to get into the Bass Deli at lunch because you have it backed up at Hot Springs Road and where the Walmart is, and it's a concern. And I know that, I've driven that road since I was a teenager, and I have driven Roop Street and down that hill, and we used to play Rat Patrol out there, and that whole thing is that I would like to say it's 25 miles an hour, and I'd like to say I go 25 miles an hour, but I don't think that's the case. And when I actually looked at today at the entrance on that north side, I am concerned if somebody's making a right-hand turn, if they're driving a little bit slowly, and somebody's pulling out of one of those parking spaces, that this is kind of a disaster ready to happen. And I hate to say that, but I'm looking at going, I appreciate all the green space that you have, but I think that if you're going to consider it, we need to maybe widen those areas, maybe with like a little apron type of an area, not just in and out close is a concern. And like I said, the traffic is a concern, and the parking is a concern. So, I mean, those are the things that I look at. And I mean, I am a proponent of workforce housing. I am a proponent of housing in Carson City. This is a lot of units in a kind of a congested space. So.
Commissioner Preston, for the record, my name is Nate Hudson. I'm principal of Form Grace Studio, the architect of record on this project. To tee this up and to begin, you kind of asked a lot of questions there. So to start with where you started, the number of units, there are 4 phases. Phase 1 being 12 one-bedrooms, 18 two-bedrooms. Phase 2 being 15 one-bedrooms, 18 two-bedrooms. Phase 3 being 12 one-bedrooms, 18 two-bedrooms. And Phase 4 being 15 one-bedrooms, 18 two-bedrooms. That's as listed in the information, phases 1 through 4 in that order. That comes out to a total of 54 one-bedrooms and 72 two-bedrooms.
Matthew Fleming, Executive Director, Northern Nevada Community Housing. I will do my best to answer all of the other concerns that you have raised. I do very much appreciate those concerns. I share any concern that anyone brings up who's local, who has a good idea. I skateboarded on those streets too, just so you know. I was a senator, so I'm just saying that I do appreciate Carson City. I do appreciate this neighborhood, and I don't like 2D images on a flat screen. I prefer you go to Valley Springs, which is literally across the street, and you look at what is happening at that property, because it is the exact makeup, same population, same people, same services, exact same makeup as Valley Springs. It's just a clone in regards to the way we've set up the project itself. And if you look at Valley Springs, that is an award-winning project for the state of Nevada. It has been a poster child for the governor's office, the senator's office, the mayor's office, and it's because we develop with all of these concerns in mind. And if you just go and look for yourself, you'll see our parking is empty. Our streets are not congested. We are not creating crime and traffic. We are the perfect neighbor you would want to build a facility this size, because we're serving the folks who protected our freedoms, and we're giving them some place to call home that they deserve within walking distance of amenities and places that others in the community enjoy. I personally believe our veterans deserve better. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for staff or the applicant? Commissioner Perry?
For the applicant. So your other complex that you built, and I forgot the name of it, say it again.
Valley Springs.
Valley Springs.
Matthew Fleming.
What percentage of Valley Springs is veterans occupied?
Sorry? 85%, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff or the applicant from the commission? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
You want to take a break before we do this or after?
Does anyone need a break? Commissioner, do you want a break? No? Let's get started. Okay, now's the time for public comment. Please come on up, sign your name, and keep your discussion to 3 minutes or less, please. And the next person can come up and sign in.
Thank you all for listening to us today. Sorry, my throat's crazy with the allergies and everything, so I'll try to get through this. I appreciate all you guys' comments. A lot of them are going to be similar to what.
Did you say your name? Sorry.
Patrick Hartman, yes.
Okay, sorry.
My wife and I live at 856 Ridgefield, which is APN 002723-3, so we're on the ridge line there, right above Quick Stop. We've been at that residence since 02. This is one of my neighbors, been there almost as long as me. And we seriously have some serious challenges and considerations that I know Ms. Preston brought up as well. So let me just start by saying that all of us at Northridge are extremely disappointed on how this proposed community and fast-track public hearing came about so quickly, specifically with not notifying all of the Northridge residents about this public session. We could not understand initially how
quote unquote, no one knew about this meeting until I read the 447-page report. When I found the fine print that said the only ones that were notified about it were people within 600 feet of the property. Not sure what the math was used to determine the 97 property owners and 126 mobile home park residents that were stated in the report, but many of us in Northridge could only determine that 1/2 or less in Northridge were part of that demographic. It is also very surprising that there was less than 2 weeks' notice given to the same residents between the mailing and today's public hearing. There's a few individuals in this room that never even got a notice, and they're on the ridgeline. So, big concern. Once my wife and I heard about this meeting early last week, we started to talk to neighbors and many others in the Northridge area, and 99% of them had no idea that this was even being proposed, nor did they know that it was a low-income development that was on the docket. Nor did they know about the public hearing. So the information that was given out there was just not well. Fast forward 1 week later, and many of us now believe that this appears to be a tightly wrapped up project and a package that was already decided on many months ago and has a nice red bow around it. Nobody's going to be able to untie that bow. I think it was just skated underneath personally and just brought amongst Carson City, and I'm really disappointed with the Planning Commission that this didn't get put out. I don't know what the rules and the laws are about notifying residents about upcoming projects, but this is very concerning. Traffics and U-turns at the top of the hill in Northridge around the median that's been talked about. Already we have problems with people making U-turns around that median. It's not going to stop. And oh, by the way, when you extend that median, there's a crosswalk up there at the top of the hill that crosses to go to the hiking part. Now what's going to happen when these parking stalls are full? They're going to park in that little lot up at the top of the hill, or they're going to park in our neighborhood. Heavy morning and evening traffic. Somehow there was only, it said 88 spaces. Now I'm hearing 96. I'm not sure what's real or not real. But what happens when the parking is full? That's my question. I'm on the ridgeline, and as a ridgeline person, I have a couple of quick things. Lighting, I'm 26 feet, 20 at the base, 6 with my fence. They're proposing 40 feet. I never saw that picture that got put up there about the sight line, so I'm glad to see it. But I'm still 14 feet above my fence line to that property, okay? Lighting, noise, added pollution, idling cars and delivery trucks. We're still 20 years later dealing with Walmart and the delivery trucks and the backups and the signaling. Backyard privacy from the residents facing our units is another big problem because based on that line, it's 29 feet to the top of that 3rd floor level. Unsightly roofline view of the new building, seeing the air conditioning units, seeing the solar units. Don't have any clarity on that. It's not in the report. In conclusion, you know, my wife and I are all about workforce housing. I'm in the industry of construction. I'm very much a proponent of that. I have no problems with that. I'm also a huge proponent of veterans housing. No problem with that either. But you and I both know that they're not going to fill that. There's 126 units. There's only 60 at the other unit. So to your point, 85% at a 60 unit, how many more veterans could we possibly have to fill 126 units? So we know what's going to go in there. It's low income, okay? So I'm really concerned about it. I think there's plenty of other people going to speak to some of the other things I didn't have time to talk to, but I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to us.
Thank you.
My name is Georgia Kinkella. I live at 820 Ridgefield, 2 houses down from Patrick. And I won't repeat everything he said, but I have the same concerns that he's mentioned. My house is the one closest to the corner of the northern section and Northridge. My husband and I, I'm a veteran. I spent 3 years in the Army. I spent 23 years as an FBI special agent before I retired. My husband and I bought that house. We paid it off so that we could live there until we die. I'm concerned, and we bought it, of course, for the view. It's a beautiful view. We are concerned about losing the view. Part of it was addressed here. I don't trust everything I heard today. I kept hearing, oh, we live there. None of these people that talk today are going to live there. We know that. I'm concerned about too many units for that small space. That's just incredible to me. 60 units, that's a different story. That many is too many. My house is the closest to the traffic light on Roop and Northridge. It's already crazy busy there. All hours of the night you hear people without good mufflers. It's just going to be incredibly increased with this many. I'm concerned about the number of parking spaces. I think it's already been said, but I just picture people driving into our neighborhoods and park on the street. We already have a lot of people that park on the street instead of using their garages for some reason. They use it to store stuff. We don't need other cars in our neighborhoods. And my main concern is that our property values will go down, and I think they will. I know that's been addressed by the people that are proposing this. I just don't think it's fair at this late date. I've been there for 18 years. Like I said, I want to be there for the rest of my life, and my husband's already talking about selling. So I'm very concerned, and I hope you will take these concerns into mind when you're voting on this and make some changes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have to push something?
It's ready to go.
Okay. My name is Karen Lance Fife, and I live on Long Ridge, but I live on the south side of North Ridge on Long Ridge, and I'm 2 streets in. And I already, when I need to go to Roop, I already have a sight problem turning left onto North Ridge. And we also have a turnabout 2 streets down. So and Northridge is becoming a thoroughfare. It's the traffic has grown enormously. I've lived there for 18 years as well. And if cars coming out of the south side of this new development, they can't turn left, they're going to have to turn right, which means that there's going to be more traffic going down Northridge, because those that are closest to Northridge are not going to drive over and turn onto Roop. They're going to turn onto Northridge, go down to the roundabout, and come back up. And the traffic is already very difficult. I know that when I'm making a left-hand turn, I can't tell you how many times I'm in the middle of my turn and cars are speeding from Roop down Northridge going east. And it's just going to be a nightmare with traffic. It's already becoming a nightmare, and it's just going to get worse. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kirsten Menchu, and I actually helped lease up Valley Springs. I have worked with Northern Nevada Community Housing for over 5 years, and we have developed over 5 properties in that timeline. I would like to address the aforementioned concern that was mentioned by one of the chairs, as well as some of the opposition of this project. Valley Springs currently has a waiting list of over 700 people. Almost 600 of those are veterans. We have a need for low-income workforce housing. We have a need for veteran assistance, and we need to have more buildings in this area. 700 people on this waiting list, and the project has been open since 2020. We cannot build these projects fast enough to fill the need in Northern Nevada. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cynthia Christomal, for the record. I am the site director of Nation's Finest here in Carson City. We help veterans gain stable housing. We, on average, will assist 225 veterans, whether that be getting them into permanent housing or keeping them where they are currently. We have seen an increase in the need for veteran housing, affordable veteran housing. That 85% of veterans that are housed in Valley Springs, we probably put half of those in there, half of our veterans into that housing. We desperately need this affordable housing for veterans. It has been mentioned, veterans, signed up for the military to protect us all, and now it's our turn to protect them from being on the streets. What I hear a lot is, well, it's going to bring down property values, it's going to do harm to the neighborhood. I can understand that argument. However, what on the opposite end of that spectrum, what I hear on a daily basis from people is, I'm tired of walking out of my house and seeing the homeless tent that's outside, or driving down the street and I'm seeing 5 or 6 on the street. If we had affordable housing for our veterans, we could place them there. They wouldn't be on the street. There wouldn't be as much crime. There wouldn't be as much destruction of the environment. There would be pride. Let's give pride back to our veterans. We should not have them on the streets. We should be able to help them gain stable housing.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kevin McGrath. I live next to Pat, who spoke first. First off, I'd like to say that I had not received any notice of this meeting or this proposal. I'm still waiting on the mail. I don't know who's supposed to send that out or whatnot, but I would ask that this would just be delayed so at least I'd have the chance to read the entirety of the report. I've only been able to skim over the first bit, so I still have a lot of questions. I echo Pat's feeling and my neighbor's feeling with all their concerns. Some other concerns that I haven't heard raised yet is this is supposed to be for veterans housing. I work as a paramedic for REMSA in Washoe County, and a lot of the problems I see is access to patients on multi-story units. It delays a response time. They said that there's elevators here. I don't know if these elevators accommodate gurneys or not, but a lot of the veterans that I go to are stair access only, and that delays care. My thought with that is also parking. There's not enough parking, I would say, for these units. We live in a society where everything's based upon driving. The VA is in Reno. These veterans are going to have to get transport to the VA. Not having enough parking is a big concern. Public transportation is not up to capacity to help these individuals. The next thing is this is multi-phase construction, so just being a resident in the area, having to put up with construction for 4 years, I think is quite excessive. I don't think that we need to have construction going on that long. I think a shorter time frame would be more accommodating to the people that live in that area. And lastly, I'd just like to remind you, again, I received no notice, so I'm not saying that we can't have this project go forward. I just have concerns, and I'd like time to be able to review the plan and voice those concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Joseph Sylvester. I'm the manager of Valley Springs Apartments. I was just going to answer further questions on the elevator and access to all of our residents over there. Elevators are new under code. We actually have elevators that a full gurney can fit in. They can fit a gurney with 4 different paramedics in there going straight up to the 3rd floor with no problems on that factor. So we are up to code on everything like that. We're also sitting to hit the parking as one of the largest ones. We are at a low-income housing project. Most of our veterans, most of our clients are elderly. Most of them are on a fixed income, so a lot of them do not have vehicles. We're sitting at a 62 apartment complex with probably about 36 or 38 cars. We have 72 covered parking spaces. We also have another 20 uncovered parking spaces. What we deal with is actually the people around our complex parking in our lot because we have lots of empty spaces. So parking really doesn't fall into any factor with our complexes because you are dealing with people who actually don't have vehicles. They're on a fixed income. They've lost a lot of the things that they're coming from either situations where they're at. Most of the VA comes in and actually has buses that pick them up and actually takes care of them because they have services for those. So the parking one-wise, I really don't see any kind of problem with that. What we're dealing with is very open parking at our property and not enough cars to actually take up the parking. So neighbors, community areas, the housing right behind us, they park into our parking actually now. And that's what we're doing with trying to make sure that they keep in their own parking. But that was about all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment?
My name is Tomasz Bartoshin. I live in 880 Ridgefield Drive. I'm their neighbor. I'm also a veteran. I'm actually retired. I want to say that it's a great project, but the location will be bad based on the traffic I have seen. And in addition, the noise. I already have Walmart in front of my balcony where from 5 o'clock till 10 o'clock at nighttime, I got trucks coming in and out to deliver. And based on what I see, the parking lot along where the fence, there was also a lot of noise because as a veteran, and I know how it is, how people drive in and have a car collection, motorcycles, so there'll be additional noise. So that's my concern. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Come on up. Please sign in and state your name. Green. There you go.
My name is David Overland, and I also live in Northridge. And I'm really concerned that this building would probably be full of all the residents that would be impacted by this. And the traffic that they mention about coming down to the roundabout and going back up, trying to get out of there, is going to be really impacted. And on Northridge is a major artery from Lampa and from the MAC facility going back to Roop Street. And when they talk about Valley Springs is set back a little bit, and it's on not on the major artery. So the way they have their set up, it's nice that they have it over there, but when they put it on that hill during the weather, and the weather is happening, and it's snow happening, and you got to get a snow truck on there, and there's sand coming down, I don't see all those people moving around there like they need to, because when you go up that hill and you have to just ease up on it, and there's a crosswalk just before you get to the top, and then you got to ease down the other side and not run into somebody, and now you have that access that has to come across there from those buildings that are going to be there, and that access that's going to come out of there to try to go down the road, or from the other side, you're asking for a collision to happen. And emergency trucks have to be able to get access through there. I've seen the hook and ladder come through there and go through the roundabouts, and to make sure they go up that road and down, they're not going to be able to get to our residents when there's a fire, because that road was, would you guys say, 4 years that they're going to be doing this project? And they show that already up there on a flat plateau. That is on a hill right there. And those people coming in and out of there, we're all going to be affected in the neighborhood. And anybody that comes out of there that works for the city, they're not getting through there to go to work. They're not even going to be able to make it. It's not going to happen. And weather conditions are a factor, besides all that congested traffic. And you put all those buildings that are right there on that main road where Roops comes down through there, you're just asking for more traffic. It's not set up for that particular, the way they have it set up with the density. And they're also affecting the property values of the people who live there, that we bought property. And originally that property that was in the middle was only supposed to be for commercial property, commercial retail. Then you could have come through, and if they built it on there, and even though they got a driveway in there, that would have been just an out and not an in. They would have come through Basque, they would have extended that through there, and then they would have had, like, let's say, a dentist office, and they're only there from 8 to 5. Now all we have is 24 hours. And on that incline at the end where the city already spent all that money, on the end right there, where they have the boxes and the meters, there's not a full sidewalk at the end of that box. You have to dodge all the boxes that they put down there at the bottom and the electrical that's up on the top. There's not a lot of room for this facility to be in that spot, and especially for the density. It does not make any sense at all. And for them to run this through here like a box of glazed donuts and it looks really, really good, it's not. You're going to regret it afterwards. And when someone gets injured, everyone needs to be thinking about all the accidents that are going to be happening on that road. And when he can't answer that question on the traffic impact over there and how that's supposed to happen, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered on according to that. And I hope that the city council actually addresses those things and make sure that at least when we live in that neighborhood, that we can access that road safely, and that anybody else that's either walking in that neighborhood or walking their dog or transferring over to the top to enjoy that walk path or in the rest of the neighborhood aren't impacted by this quickly expedited plan to put these homes here. Because they're not really homes, they're just planted there. And the property value is probably far more expensive than how they end up getting that property. It's pretty amazing how they end up ramming that through. And I've lived there for over 20 years. That Rube Street and right across there in weather conditions, going the other way, when you add more traffic, the other way, people have taken out the fences because they can't make it down the hill when it's icy. Okay. They've ran into the house across the street at the roundabout, and they had to put poles there because they ran into it because of the ice. People don't stop. You're adding more traffic to the roundabouts at the bottom of the hill with that big, huge boulder that's down there. It's going to cause a lot of problems. And I don't see anything that's going to be good coming out of this at all. So anyway, that's all I have to say. I hope that everyone really addresses that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, man. That was perfect. How's it going? I agree with everything he just said.
Okay, please
100%.
state your name for the record.
My name's
though.
Mike. And
My last name too.
Last name's Hunt. The major thing that a lot of people aren't talking about is we all agree veterans need places. I mean, this just isn't the place for it. It's too crowded. I mean, it's a broken record with the traffic, but the big issue is, like, my wife and I came to Carson City because we wanted to live civilized. This isn't civilized living when you start just packing in more and more people in an area that it's not a good area for it. I mean, it sounds like a good project. These guys have good intent in this and that, but just not right here. The weather, I don't hear a lot of comments about the weather. When it starts snowing on those streets, it's like a crash derby. They even warned us. I live right off of Northridge. They warned us, don't park your car on the corner because chances are someone's going to slide into you or even take your wall out. All the questions that have been asked about traffic, especially Terry. I really appreciate everything Terry asked. She brought up some really good points. None of these guys could answer any of the questions. This guy in the end, I didn't hear a word out of him on any kind of solution. So I'll make it quick. It's just, I don't think this should be approved until especially the traffic is addressed, because it's a major problem. Anyways, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Seeing none, Heather, would you like to address some of the concerns? Then the one I'd say take first is probably the staff notification for people, that process. Can you please lay that out?
Thank you. For the record, Heather Manzo. So in terms of public notice, we follow the code standard for notification. So in this case, for this type of request, notification goes out to property owners within 600 feet of the property, the subject property, with a minimum of at least 30 residents. So if there weren't 30, we would go out further to capture at least 30. In this case, there were 97 property owners, 126 mobile home park residents within that 600 foot. So that's per legal notice. It's adopted as part of our code.
Any other items?
If you have ideas on how you would like me to address them, then
No,
I can go
if
through
you
them.
have any other additional responses beyond what's been said before.
I can go ahead and turn it over to Stephen to address traffic.
Okay.
Let's see, where do we want to start? So I heard a lot of the citizens echoing some of the concerns that the commission had about site distance. Perhaps a condition related to analyzing site distance at the proposed driveways and at the crosswalk at the top of the hill might be prudent. I have some language if that's something that the commission would like to entertain. But with respect to the traffic impact study in general and the increase in volume, I just wanted to remind the commission that we are looking at a special use permit based on the proposed use, and that in retail commercial, there are a lot of high traffic generating uses allowed by right. So when we're looking at the findings and making those findings, a restaurant, for say, example, could go on these sites and go straight to building permit without coming before this commission. And based on the adjacent sites, the parcel just north is about a sixth of the size of the cumulative size of these two parcels. Just based on the satellite view, it looks like it's got about 10,000 square feet of commercial space. If you just matched that on each of the sites, you would exceed the traffic volumes that they're anticipating here. Not that that means we take the traffic lightly, we do. We take it seriously. And the traffic impact study that was submitted, other than the concerns brought up about site distance, it meets all of our standards, and staff feel that it's done well and meets the codified requirements for a traffic impact study. Concerns were brought up for bus stops. There is an existing bus stop approximately 1,000 feet away along the sidewalks as you go into Walmart. So that's something to take into consideration. I think that's all I have for traffic.
Okay. Any commissioner comments, questions? Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. You had over 3 minutes, so it.
And I appreciate that for me. I was pretty excited to be able to tell you and try to get it all.
Please keep it
I will
quick,
only make- I
and
will only
please
make this
state your
last
name
little
for the
thing, 'cause
record.
I really think it's really important. The other thing that we see when we live in our neighborhood.
Can you state your name
again, please?
David Overland. The other thing that we see in our neighborhood that we really enjoy is that we have a lot of natural animals. We have the animals that migrate and move around in Carson City, and they actually go up on Lone Mountain, and they make it past that direction, and they go into the easement. And I actually get them in my backyard going through there to go to the other side, even behind Walmart and behind Home Depot, and to get to the other side and to get to the trail that's over on the other side. I don't know where they go. I see them, and they go in packs, and I think this is going to affect them moving around, and you're going to end up with them on the streets. You're going to see other animals that are also in our area, natural habitat, that are also going to be affected by this. So anyway, I think that's something to be concerned about and to address, the habitat that's in this dense population. So, okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Preston?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're being asked to do is to change this to be multifamily. And I have seen your other project, and it's a beautiful project. And it's on Hot Springs Road, which is not really truly have the traffic that we have. In addition to that, it has another road off of it, which goes both ways. And one of the things that, I said is that it's a very good project. You've done well. I just am concerned about the traffic on here. Really strongly concerned about it. Why was the parking reduced so far?
Thank you, Heather Manzo, for the record. In terms of parking, the applicant had provided a parking justification request that included the ITE manual calculations for both multifamily and for an affordable housing project. But we'll focus on multifamily because that's what the gauge was that staff used for the analysis. And so their request noted that ITE in general recommends 1.3 parking spaces for each multifamily unit. In addition to that, and maybe even more importantly, is the project that is located a quarter mile down the street. The applicant did 3 different surveys of the site during the period before they applied and prepared their traffic study, noting that there was at a max about 66% of the parking spaces on that site being utilized at any given time. Staff questioned whether or not that was a realistic number, and so we did, on multiple occasions, both during the day and also after hours, which would generally be peak times for folks to be home, like a Tuesday evening. We looked at the site and counted 50-plus vacant parking spaces that were available for use and just not being utilized. So based on both the ITE manual recommendations and a visual inspection of a similar project that's going to have the same type of tenant occupancy, staff felt very comfortable with the parking reduction.
Thank you, Heather. I guess I see a slight conflict here. I like the limited parking because of the traffic issues. Less parking, less cars, but Commissioner Eswine?
I'd like to just comment on a couple of the items that the public brought up. First of all, in terms of, accusing the city of fast-tracking this, fast-tracking is, this project was submitted to the city. The city has 65 days to review and submit it to the Planning Commission for their approval. That's not that's fast-tracking, but that's because state law says that we have to fast-track it. And my other comment is, I heard some folks complaining that this would be low income. I'm not in the position of, I'm not a low income person, but I definitely believe that discrimination against low income people should not be allowed. And we as a commission are not, or I as a commissioner am not going to vote because somebody doesn't like low income housing. Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Borders?
Stephen, you said you might have some wordage on sightline. What would that look like?
With the site improvement permit, the traffic impact study must be updated to analyze the site distance for all 4 proposed driveways and at the crosswalk on Northridge Drive east of the project. Any potential vehicular or pedestrian conflicts that arise from poor site distance must be mitigated with the site improvement permit.
Okay. I like that.
Does the site distance take into account the traffic conflicts or other stuff that could happen turning in and out of the facility?
It does, yes.
Okay. And you did address the pedestrian crossing? Okay.
Correct, yeah.
Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Perry?
Yes, thank you. So, I mean, I heard a number of things here. The notification issue, and indeed, if somebody wasn't notified for some reason, I don't know what the answer to that is, because I know the city does as thorough a job as they can at finding the homeowner to send them. But if there was some that weren't notified for some reason, then we need to, we need to fix that. And the notifications have to come out, I think, a week before, 10 days?
So notices are required to go out at least 10 days prior to the meeting.
10 days prior. And that's the
Correct.
same time the Planning Commission gets anything presented to them, too.
Notification by how?
So the 10 days is notification by mail to the folks within that distance radius. For these kinds of projects, they also are published in the paper.
Sorry to interrupt.
So my second one here, I heard view. And this is one that we often hear. But the reality is that there are no statutes or regulations around view. Nobody's entitled to a view. There's no view shed. We can't make a decision on that or deny something for that. But it does appear they tried to address some of those. I do see, and I drove up and down Northridge and got out and parked and went up the hill, and I've hiked on that hill before, and And I can see where there is a lot of traffic there. It's two-lane roads. And looking at, you know, the connectivity of the city and some of the traffic study things in here, there are some components of this. You know, if you look at level of service, there's A, B, C, and D, and there's kind of a mix there, and some of them are D. So I think we are starting to have a congestion issue at this, on Northridge at this intersection. And I don't think that this project can fix that per se, but I think it's something that from the city standpoint, we've got to start taking a look at. Is there another way to connect these neighborhoods? Because you got that hill there and that blocks it all the way down to the graveyard. And there is more and more traffic moving on it. It's a cumulative issue that I think needs to be looked at, because I am sensitive to the comments on coming down that hill, which does have a slope in the middle of winter, and it being slick. And I don't know if there's anything that can be done on the road to address that, but I've not been on it in the winter, but I can certainly visualize that happening on that road coming down the hill in the winter, and that is of concern at that crosswalk, because there's probably kids going to school or catching buses there too. I'm not concerned about the parking issue there, because I do believe what they're saying, that this is a veterans project and that it's not going to see a lot of cars. And it's not the first time that we've done a reduction of required parking spaces specifically for something like this, where it is a population that doesn't typically have cars. And it is a way of reducing the footprint and adding to the number of units. I think that this organization, for everything that I've read, does a good job of managing these very well, and serves a community that is largely underserved. And believe me, we see a lot coming into the Planning Commission where people come and say, when are you going to zone some affordable housing? You know, we don't have any workforce housing and those things in this community. And honestly, in 2 years, this is the first one I've seen. So to me, that's a positive, because we don't have that many of these here in the community. And the last probably 4 or 5 apartment complexes that I can recall, because I always ask the question, how much is the rent going to be? You know, or in the $1,200 to $1,500 range, which, you know, to me is a mortgage payment, but that's what people are paying for rent now. So this is about half of that. And I think is a positive thing on how they finance these, and however they do that with borrowing money from government funds. And finally, I'll say it is both parcels are private property. Someone's going to get built on them, you know. And if it was a commercial thing, if it was stores or something down there, we wouldn't be here at this meeting, because the only thing that triggered this is that it is a high density, or it's a multifamily residential use going onto commercial property, and it has been commercial property for many, many, many years. It's bounded by city property on all sides. So I'm hoping that the deer that move around, because they move around in my yard, will be able to maneuver around that, because there is a big piece of city property there that goes all the way to the graveyard that I don't ever see changing from anything other than in public. I just wanted to try and comment on a few of those things, because when all of us as volunteers raise our hand for the planning commission, we hear a lot of different things from different groups, and sometimes these boundary issues of when there's going to be high density residential next to medium density residential, they're always the ones that seem to bring people out, because it is a change, and people are concerned and they worry of how that's going to affect, their homes, as I would be too. Those are just my comments. I don't have any answers, but I do think that the biggest issue here long-term is traffic, and it's not one that's going to be solved by this project, but I think long-term we got to start thinking about it in the city, because these are growing to be, what is a RUP, a minor arterial route now?
In this section, it's a collector.
It's a collector.
Correct.
But I think it's probably approaching minor arterial route with 2 lanes there, so, just thoughts to look at as we go forward with other development that happens. Thank you for listening to me.
Okay.
I have one short comment, if I may.
Quick comment, and
Yes,
please keep to
quick.
something new that hasn't been discussed.
I just wanted to mention that Heather
Name
said-
for the record again?
Georgia Kinkella. Heather mentioned that the notifications were made into the trailer, the mobile home park, who are separated from Route by a large block wall. They are not affected by this the way these residents are. So I'd like you to take that into consideration.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Kilgore?
Got a lot of anxiety on this one here. I'm pretty familiar with the area. I've actually spent a lot of time growing up right there on the Ridge Crest, and I've actually drove back and forth across Route 3 times today just to get an idea of what the traffic was going to look like over there. And I got to say, I spent some time driving there in the winter as well and have seen some accidents in that area. And the red flags for that, it's like a carnival over there. And for that matter, in the past, there's been no doubt that when it's come to the commission having to vote on some of these projects, as far as for condensed housing, that I've taken very close appreciation of what the public has had to say, and I've sided with their opinion in the past. And to kind of state on the whole red ribbon wrapped up thing, that's kind of been the case in the past, is that I've been all in favor of siding with the public opinion on these issues, and it leaves me all alone up here. So though you will get my vote in your favor on this one, I can't promise it's going to make a difference, but seeing as how I see all these red flags, especially when the weather hits, and it's going to be nasty, especially since I still have to commute on that road as well. I see this being an issue for me too. So I'm not going to be the clown in all those red flags, and I can say that once again, the public support will be me in your favor, and I really hope that I can sway some of the other commissioners this time to join me in that, and that's it.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments?
I have one.
Commissioner Borders?
Would the applicant be acceptable to that condition that Stephen read?
Stacy Huggins for the, on.
I think so.
Okay, Stacy Huggins for the record. Yes, we are acceptable of that condition.
Okay.
What was that condition, if I could ask?
That was the.
Stephen, you want to read it
That
again?
was yeah,
It's the site distance one.
The site distance?
Yes.
Yeah, read it. Would you read it for the,
With the site improvement permit, the traffic impact study must be updated to analyze the site distance at all 4 proposed driveways and at the crosswalk on North Ridge Drive east of the project. Any potential vehicular or pedestrian conflicts that arise from poor site distance must be mitigated with the site improvement permit.
And that would be added to the conditions of approval?
Yeah.
Okay.
I also would like to state that I agree with Commissioner Perry on the parking. Given the fact that Richards Crossing has about 6 or 8 cars that stay there, and their sister project, Valley Springs, has 50 cars. I don't think we're going to fill these parking lots. And I don't think also, to go along with that it's necessarily fair for us as a community to blame a developer for our crappy streets. Well, all right, let's blow up the bridges and sink the ferries, and we'll put a wall around the whole place and tell everybody else to go away. We can't do that. We can't do that. We can do the best we can in the guise of what the city ordinances will allow us to do. And I don't think I have real concerns about the hill en route. But if the traffic study will make some analysis and provide some confidence that this project will not exacerbate that problem, I think I have to support it. So, that being said, I think that's all I got.
I would real quick like to state that I do support this project. This is an incredible project. The developers are very, very good. I've literally looked at their other facilities, some of the best, like they said, there's no doubt about that. But this location with this traffic issue makes it impossible for me to be able to vote.
The other thing that came to mind was that we wrestled about 4 months ago with a U-Haul. And on the same piece of property like this, zone commercial, they put a 40-foot building 15 feet from the property line. And that can happen in this property because it's zoned retail commercial. So if you think that, a 35-foot apartment house is obtrusive, how about a big square box that's 45 feet tall? There are so many things that can happen in this property that I think you got to be careful what you wish for. And having said that, I'm done.
Okay. I would be supportive of a condition 11 that Stephen read. Other commissioners? Good? Okay. Do we have a motion or any final discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve special use permit LU 2022-0119 based on the ability to make the findings and subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report with the addition of condition number 11 on traffic site requirements that Stephen read into the record.
I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Excuse me, nay. And I'm, of course, been asked to state why and nay. And in this instance, it's because I believe that it adds additional dangers to the neighborhood by way of traffic being too congested in this area, specifically when the weather hits. And, of course, siding with public opinion.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes. For the community
Were
here.
there 2 nays, Mr. Chair?
What's that?
2 nays?
Two nays?
No,
Just one?
Just one nay from
Okay.
Commissioner Kilgore.
Thank you.
To the community here, there is an appeal process. You can take this to the board and you can contact staff on how to do that. For the rest of the public, it does not sway the commission to be rude. So I don't recommend that in the future.
Agreed.
We'll take a couple minute recess while people mosey on out.
Bang the gavel.
Do we have to bang it? Hang up.
When there's, when there's further development going into the future, somehow we're gonna figure out how to maybe declutter some of the traffic in there, because it is gonna get worse, I think.
Oh, it's gonna be bad.
Okay, okay.
Reconvening the Carson City Planning Commission. Moving on to staff reports. Heather.
Thank you, Heather Ferris, for the record. So future agenda items. So on next month's agenda, it's looking like we've got a major variance coming before you for setbacks. These are side setbacks on a small lot on Spears. We've got a text amendment that's been requested to allow watchman quarters in commercial zoning. Currently, it's not an allowed use, either conditionally or otherwise. And then we're also going to be bringing forward some zoning map amendments and master plan map amendments for the master plan annual report. So you guys saw this at the end of last year. So we're going to be bringing forward some of those. We're going to start trickling those through as we have time. So at this point, we might also have some Title 18 stuff coming back to you. But that's going to be up to Hope as to whether or not she brings that to you.
Okay.
Heather, didn't we take the Watchman part out of Title 18? We talked about it. I thought we were going to take the whole section about the watchman's quarters out.
I'll double check.
Okay.
But I don't believe so. And right now, we're working with the current code, so any of your modifications haven't been approved, but I will look into that as we go forward with the application.
That would help to see where we want to go with this. Okay. Any commissioner reports or comments? Seeing none. Public comment? I don't think we have any public. Do I still have to do it officially? Yeah, okay. The public is invited at this time to comment on and to discuss any topic that's relevant to or within the authority of the Planning Commission, including any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. Seeing no one from the public, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, aye? Motion passes.